Hi, and welcome to another episode of Ask on CYC. We have a great episode lined up for you today. So I'm not going to give you my usual intro like I normally do, because you all know what Illuminati is. I'm not going to tell you what it is. I'm not going to tell you what it's based about, because I want you to listen to this episode to see what is going on, because you're going to be surprised from what you're about to hear. You're going to be shocked from the things you're about to hear on Illuminati. If you have questions, please tune in and send your questions to 0416 551 292. And if you're daring, please call on the same number, 0416 551 292. So I'd like to welcome our guest for today's episode, Albert Osseily. Welcome, Albert.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here, man.
It's a pleasure having you. So Albert, I want to ask you, tell me, why did I ask you to cover this show for me?
Well, I have to, before you will go through that, I have to blame you if anyone finds this really uninteresting. It's not my fault. But look, it's something that I've been interested in when it comes to conspiracy theories. And really, when we speak about the Illuminati, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about an idea, that umbrella of the conspiracy theory. Something that I've been interested in for a long time. I'm a big reader. I love learning about that sort of stuff. And I have a rational mind. The way that I think about things, I try to think about them logically. And it's something that a lot of people are very passionate about, you know, and it's interesting. So when you think about the Illuminati, you're thinking about something that is like a ghost, something that's just in the air, something that is in the shadows playing things. It's really actually quite interesting if you want to actually know what the Illuminati is, because there really was an Illuminati. Once upon a time, there was an organization started, and it was about 1776 in an area called Bavaria, which is like common-day Germany, right? And it was a fraternity that was started. So basically, you have to remember, always trying to think about these things in the sense of, well, what was happening in the place in that time? So you had the Reformation in the 1500s, so where the Roman Catholic Church was basically having all these people saying, we don't accept your authority. We think we can understand Christianity for ourselves. So people were starting to think for themselves. And a couple of hundred years later, there were people saying, you know what? I don't want to be ruled by the church. I don't want to be ruled by church teachings. I want to think for myself. I want to understand the way the world works. I want to understand my relationships between people, that we should sort of think about it for ourselves. But you've got to remember that the freedom of speech that we have now, they didn't have it back then. So people had to start and create their own organizations, their own groups, places they could get together. It had to be a bit hush-hush, because you could still get yourself thrown into jail if you talked about these things openly. In 1776, this group of guys got together in Bavaria and they started a fraternity, and they called it the Bavarian Illuminati. An actual group. It actually existed in history. Okay. And and so they started it so that they could meet up and they could talk openly about really enlightenment ideas. So the word Illuminati actually means enlightened.
Okay.
So if you understand that, they were sitting in the Enlightenment, and they called their name that. So they just wanted to talk about, you know, we don't want the church to rule us. We want gender equality. We want to do things that it was just too risky to say out loud.
Sure.
So that's really what it was. That's where it started from.
Okay, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
But before we get into it, you know, and a lot of our viewers out there are probably passionate about this topic, and a lot of people involve emotion when it comes to this topic, and they're so consistent on their opinions, which everyone's entitled to their opinions. But what headspace should we be in before we delve into a topic like this?
It's actually really important. When you always deal with issues like that, things like conspiracies, you always have to think about it rationally and what evidence. I think the most dangerous thing is, and it's funny that we're having this conversation and it's going to go on YouTube, is that you shouldn't necessarily believe everything you see on YouTube. You know, sometimes when, you know, I was at that place when I was just so interested in the Illuminati and I was watching every video, I'd click, oh my God, did you see this? And what was quite interesting was that there were a lot of videos where it was just flashes on the screen of pictures of pyramids with the all-seeing eye and seal on the American. and then some guy would be talking in the background. And the problem with that is, where's the evidence? You know, like, where's the actual proof that this is happening? Saying is real. Not to say that there is no proof, but you have to come at it with a rational mind, with a mind that's asking, well, where's the evidence?
Sure.
Okay, so if people are passionate, and I've had mates pulled me aside in the corner at a friend's house and said, "Nah, but you're wrong. The Illuminati's real, and Jay-Z does this, and Beyonce does that, and I've seen when you go to the Masonic lodges and this and that." And I said, well, hold on. Someone's tried to tie things in together, but you've also always got to ask, where's the proof? So that's where you got to have the headspace. When we talk about it, and as I say to anyone watching this, I want you to believe me because I'm talking about it. I hope that this conversation really starts an interesting learning experience for yourself. Go out and inquire, go out and think, go out and find the proof yourself. So everything that I'm talking about, for example, with the beginnings of the Bavarian Illuminati, go read some history books. That's real. So that's why when I talk about it, I'm actually talking about, names and people and places which are set in stone. You know about that. When we start to talk about the Illuminati of today, that's sort of the thing where we have a general sense, because to be quite honest, there isn't that hard and fast proof. So and that's why we have to have that headspace.
So with Illuminati today, what do you think people's thoughts about it when they hear about it?
Definitely, when people hear the word Illuminati, they think of a puppet master. So they think of a very secretive group of generally powerful men, maybe some women, who are controlling the strings behind world actions, behind world events. So in September 11 is Illuminati. This war over here, Illuminati. Ebola in West Africa, probably the Illuminati. And so people perhaps want to believe that things don't happen by chance, that things don't happen without someone's control. People actually want to believe that there is someone controlling everything behind it. So that's what most people believe. And then it's quite interesting, you'll get different people who both believe in the Illuminati. They'll say, oh, September 11 was Illuminati. No. Not September 11. That was an American inside job. You know what was Illuminati? It was Ebola. No. That wasn't that. That was the CIA. You know what was really the Illuminati? Yeah. No. So people can't even agree on what the Illuminati control. Jay-Z's the Illuminati. No, Beyonce is. No, it's not that one. It's Drake. No, it's not Drake. It's, you know what I mean? It's Ice Cube. And
okay. Look, I know you said earlier that it was established in 1776 and existed back then.
It did exist,
But does it exist now? And that's probably the million-dollar question where all our viewers are sitting at home saying, what's he going to say? What's he going to say?
So if we go back to what I was saying, the story, it's quite interesting. If you don't mind, I'll just sort of quickly go through what actually happened.
Sure.
So the guys who started the Bavarian Illuminati in 1776, it was a fraternity, and it was basically, try to think of it like a social group to talk about Enlightenment ideas, which were very risky, dangerous to talk about, get myself thrown into jail. What was happening was at the beginning, they weren't getting many members. So very much like any secret society, they weren't just going to advertise it. They weren't going to write something and then post it out on the door and say, hey, would you like to join our secret society? It was by basically invitation. So the 5 or 6 or 7 members at the beginning, they'd go out and talk to someone and try to scope out the way that person thought and they felt about certain issues. And then if they thought, you know what, you'd fit into our group, they might let them know about it. Because it was that sort of danger.
Sure.
What was happening was they weren't getting many people. So they had an idea to actually infiltrate the Freemasons. So the Freemasons, he said the Freemasons, oh my God. Well, the Freemasons basically lived in the same sort of world. They were a fraternal group, they were secret, they did live with Enlightenment ideals, but they were a lot more established. They'd started up in the 1400s, 1500s. And so really the idea of creating the Masons wasn't to control them, because the Masons were huge. But ideas, well, how do the Masons do it? We want to start a fraternity. The Masons are an established fraternity. Well, how can we do it? Maybe we can influence some Masons to come over to our fraternity, to join us, because we think we've got, we think the way we do things is a bit better. And so that's how it actually grew. But within about 10 years, maybe 10 to 15 years, word got out in the local area about the Bavarian Illuminati, and pressure from the Roman Catholic Church and other organizations basically had the ruler issue an edict, which is basically a rule saying, You can't be part of such an organisation.
So they weren't secret anymore.
Weren't secret anymore, and that's the nature of things.
Yeah.
You know, whatever you think you want to keep secret always comes out.
Okay.
And they got banned.
Okay.
And that's really the end of the story. Like,
All
I
right.
know people will be thinking, no, this guy's crazy. He's part of the Illuminati. He's trying to keep it secret. But for real, the Bavarian Illuminati, that actual real organisation that started in 1776, it was banned and it was disbanded. Now, that doesn't mean that the people who were a part of it stopped believing. Maybe some of them went back to their old jobs. Maybe some of them joined the Masons. That's a very real possibility. An organisation that was quite close to their own fraternity. Maybe they started another one. But something called the Illuminati disappeared. What ends up happening when you read the history books, there's no real discussion or referencing about the Illuminati, about an actual fraternity, secret society called the Illuminati. It's not until you really get into the 19th century, the 20th century that people start talking about it, but they only talk about it as speculation. An event occurred, you know what? Maybe the Illuminati is still alive and they're playing puppet master in the background. And it's not until the 20th century, in the US especially, that a lot of conspiracy theories started to be created, tying the Bavarian Illuminati to world events. So really, in terms of what proof is there now of the Bavarian Illuminati actually being a real organisation, they have members, they have halls and buildings that they sit in, there's basically none. And a lot of it, if you actually look at it in a critical manner, there is very little proof that the Bavarian Illuminati actually exists as any real organisation today. Now, that does not mean that there aren't power structures. That does not mean that there aren't people who try to control things in the background. But I'm trying to say, is it this group that has a name, that, you know, has halls? I don't think so.
See, I've read that nowadays using Illuminati, and they're claiming that they're descendants from the Bavarian to lure people in, to attract members. Whether they are or not, that wasn't their intention.
Yeah.
Their intention was to attract people to join this society.
So when you say who, that's always the question. Well, like, who are you talking about? So when you say they are using the name Bavarian Illuminati, they are doing this, they are that. Where are they? Where are they? You know what I mean? You've always got to ask the question, where is your evidence? Where is your proof? And it's not to say that conspiracies don't happen, that groups of people don't try to do bad things. But again, eventually, it all comes to the light. So the people who do the bad things, they end up admitting to it, or the people who are the victims to it, or participants in it, they end up admitting to it, or some documents get revealed, or a place gets discovered. But to just sort of say, I think through my own thoughts that this and this and this event, random, no. And then just to assign a name, it's silly. You got to remember, if someone says Illuminati, someone else says New World Order. Someone else says, oh, it's the Great Conspiracy. There's a million names. Like if you go on the net and look up, for example, the New World Order, that's an overall encompassing idea that there is a group of people who are trying to control the world. Control banks, control governments, control media outlets, and doing all these things. And they're basically a group of connected people, and they all know each other, and they're all friends, and maybe they meet, and they wear top hats, and they smoke cigars, and they have drinks. And does this really happen? Where's your proof? Show it to me. The problem with our culture is that we like to imagine the bad guys like that. Do you know what I mean? Like if you ever think about it, like ever watch a Hollywood movie, what always happens? There's a guy, he's disappointed in life, some tragedy occurs, then there's the bad guy. And the bad guy's always established, yeah? The bad guy has a name, and he has his bad guy house, or his fort, or his, where him and his henchmen are, and he has a name, and he has, the organization has a name. Think about all the movies that we ever watch, the bad organization has a name. They have labels and they have goals, and then the good guy defeats, and then the bad guy is destroyed, and everything he wanted to do is gone. So in our minds, that's what we imagine.
So it's keeping us interested.
Yeah, and
involved,
we look at it and we go, oh, okay, there was war, there was famine, there was... What do we think? There must be a bad guy or
someone to blame.
someone to blame.
Blame, yeah.
But you got to remember, like, think about society where we live. There's terrible things that happen, but a lot of bad people. People get killed, people get raped, people get robbed. Individual actors make decisions and they decide to do those bad things.
Sure.
Sometimes people can get together and say, hey, let us do a bad thing. But then to conspire and imagine that all really, really bad things in the hand of a certain group of people, that's a hard stretch.
So the viewers right now are probably thinking, this guy's blasphemy. He's saying Illuminati.
You know what? Hey,
exist.
if you want to say, really think that what I'm saying doesn't make sense, please call in, send an email, put it to me, because I'm open-minded as well. I'm not saying I know for a fact they don't exist, or whatever it is that you want to give them, whatever label you want to give them.
So to the viewers, if you have any questions, or if you don't agree with what he's saying, or if you're a strong believer in the Illuminati, share your opinions. Please text us on 0416 551 292, and we'll answer it for you live right here, right now on the show. So let's bring it back. So you're saying they don't exist, but are secret societies existent?
Of course.
So give me examples.
So the Masons.
Okay.
The Masons
so
are
still
a real
carried on.
organization. Yeah, absolutely. And you know how we know? Because they have buildings and they put the symbol of their organization on their buildings, and they have organizations where they have pamphlets and you can actually see them.
Let me ask you something.
Yep.
So why did the Illuminati die out? They got caught and they got arrested and made to stop.
Yep.
But why did the Freemasons continue and it's still now continuing? Why were they successful and the Illuminati were not?
If I have to put my hand up, this is now I'm trying to think rationally about this. They were more established, so they'd started earlier than the Bavarian Illuminati. They were more spread, so they were in France, they were in Italy, and they were in the continental United States. So quite famously, George Washington, the first president, was a Mason. So they'd already had an established presence
But were they doing
in two
anything
continents.
illegally? Is that why they kept
Well,
going?
well, when you say what's illegal,
Well, at that time when the Catholic Church found out about Illuminati, to them that was illegal.
yes, and it
Stopped
probably was.
Yeah.
It probably was, but you have to understand what was the whole idea behind the fraternity. It was to get outside of the control of the church. It was to get outside of basically the organization that was the Roman Catholic Church, because it was just organization like the one we know now, but it was a political organization. They were the ones who controlled kings, who controlled princes, who controlled wars, economies. People have to try to understand that's the way the world was then. And there were people who wanted to get outside of that narrative. They wanted to get outside of that playing field. They wanted their own playing field.
Sure.
They wanted to do things themselves.
Okay.
And in reality, if we wanted to talk about it in a more simpler sense, it was like a boys' club. You know what I mean? Me and the boys, we can get together and we can organize to do things. And even till today, people who are Masons, it comes out, it leaks out. That's the way the system works. When you're a Mason, you're expected to help a brother Mason. You're expected to help. So
I want you to hold that thought.
Yeah.
Because we're going to go for a quick break.
Yep.
And I want us to continue what we're talking about, because this is great. This is going to open up a can of worms.
I hope so.
So to the viewers, please, we're going to go for a quick break. But when we come back, have your questions ready and send them to 0416 551 292. This discussion is just going to get heated, and I want you to get involved with us. Thank you.
CYC, Christian Youth Channel.
On Ask of Illuminati. We were just talking before we went to the break about other secret societies such as Freemasons. So going back on the Freemasons you were talking about before.
Yep. So the Freemasons are an actual secret society, all right?
Okay.
They have been established for a long time, and I think what we were talking about is how come they're still around? How come the Illuminati aren't and the Freemasons aren't? The reality is that they've been around for a really long time. They've been established in different countries, different people who were quite powerful, like George Washington, who was the first US president, was a Mason. I think Benjamin Franklin was a Mason. Other really important people were Masons. And they've made a very conscientious decision, and this is what they say in public, is that one of the two subjects that you do not discuss within Masonry is politics and religion. And the nature of the fraternity is it's basically like a business network.
Sure.
When you join it, you're expected to obviously learn about Freemasonry, and there is a ritualistic aspect to it, there is a mystical aspect to it, but there isn't an idea that there's a different God or a different deity that you have to worship. And it's not like a whole different religion.
I hear at the beginning they prefer you come with a religion, because if you believe in a higher power, you also believe in a hierarchical system.
What's interesting in that, even within Masonry, Freemasonry, there is like two almost denominations or two schools of thoughts. There's one which does emphasize the idea of a higher power, so you have to come in, whether you're a Christian, whether you're a Jew, whether you're a Muslim, and that you believe in a supreme being.
Sure.
And there's interesting that in the French Masonry, it's actually gone the other way, where they actually don't mind if you don't believe in anything. And then they've got some extremes, like what they call lodges. The lodges are like their, I'm trying to explain it in a Christian sense. They'd almost be like, you know how the bishop establishes a church here in Sydney, right? So you've got the diocese. So it's almost like there's the diocese, right? So there'll be like a diocese in Sweden where you can't get in unless you're a Christian.
Sure.
So and they call them lodges.
Okay.
And so it's a really interesting thing, again, when we talk about Freemasons, in that they're not hierarchical, for example, like the Roman Catholic Church.
Sure.
What actually happens is that you've got each lodge, and each lodge is independent. And they, by their own authority, have a geographical region that they can control, and they can establish new lodges, like little, people can meet up. But the main lodge itself, like the Grand Lodge in each main area, they're able to establish their own rules. So it's, again, goes against the whole point that, for example, Freemasons control the world, because they have an organization which isn't hierarchical, which doesn't go all the way to the top. And the way I try to compare it, look at the way the church is now, like the Christian church in the world. Because we don't have a whole bunch of churches going all the way up to a whole bunch of bishops to one patriarch. We've got different bishops and patriarch. It's hard for them to agree. Okay. It's hard for them to sort of say, well, this is what Christianity is, and this is what the church is, and this is the way the rituals should be, and this is the way the church should be. But when we go to the Freemasons, we say, no. They're organizing stuff. They're all together, and they're all agreeing, and you know what? This is why stuff's happening. So that's really what's happening with the Masons. Now, they are what you could call semi-secret, in that they don't openly publish how their rituals are. They don't openly invite people to the public, so you can't walk into a Masonic lodge and go, hello, I'd like to be a Mason. No. It's by invite only. So the Freemasons are real. They are members to help each other. So if, for example, you get into a certain level of if you get called up because you're an engineer, because you're a lawyer, because you're a doctor, because you're a cop, because you're a politician, and hey, we need you, you're expected to help.
So you reckon they choose people who are in influential fields of work?
It's not only influential, but it's in all parts of life. You know what I mean? From politicians, again, like we go up all the way to George Washington, to heads of media companies, all the way down in Australia. We've had phenomena of people in the postal office, like postal workers and railway workers joining. So it's in all fields.
Not doing anything illegal, they're just maintaining a business.
Yeah, it's hard when you say illegal. Do I have proof?
No.
No, I don't have proof. So if you ask me, are they doing anything illegal? I don't know.
Because
you know what I mean?
they would have been busted.
Yeah, and I think so. But again, the nature of the secret society is that you don't talk about it. You know what I mean? But again, I would lean on the side that they're not doing anything illegal, because the nature of it is it's semi-secret. We don't talk about who the members are. We don't talk openly about it. And we want to help each other. And that's about it.
Okay. Before the show started, we were having discussion, and you mentioned something about the Bilderberg. Can you please let the audience know?
The Bilderberg Group.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, talking about the umbrella of conspiracy theories. So the Bilderberg Group are an organisation. They started, if I'm trying to remember, I think it was post-World War II, if I'm not mistaken, it was around that time. And it was basically an organisation that was started to allow leaders from Europe and from North America, the Allies, basically after the war, to be able to get together and sort of to maintain communication and to basically organise and to make sure that, hey, we know what we're doing. We're reorganising the world. We've just had a terrible couple of wars in the last 50 years, and we need to make sure that we're on the same page. Unfortunately, what's ended up happening is that it's become bigger than its original intentions are. And definitely there are very, very powerful people every year who attend that. Queens, kings, prime ministers, former prime ministers, ambassadors, heads of state, owners of major corporations. I think Bill Gates is gone, things like that. And again, they're a secret society. Only up until a couple of years ago, the list of attendees was kept secret. So they weren't telling anyone who was turning up, even though they'd say, hey, we're not doing anything wrong, we're not doing anything immoral. What we want is certain type of people to meet up and be able to speak openly, which in and of itself is a scary idea. Well, what are you talking about if you can't talk about it openly?
Yeah.
My feeling is that, can you imagine a whole bunch of prime ministers, kings, media moguls? They want to talk honestly about how they think the world should work, how the world should actually run, how things should be, and they don't want that to get into the public eye. There are obviously worries. That's the... I don't see that as a conspiracy per se. I just see that as power systems. Okay. So kings and queens and emperors and pharaohs and caliphs and whatever you want have been doing that since the beginning of time.
Sure.
Dealing with each other, organizing things in secret, trying to figure out things without telling the people what exactly is going on. So that's a human idea rather than a conspiracy of puppet masters in the background.
Okay, so speaking of conspiracies, I know you mentioned earlier about all these videos out there, and I've seen myself.
Yeah.
And they're so convincing.
They are.
But is it really just a conspiracy theory?
There's nothing wrong. So this is the really important point. There's nothing wrong with the idea. Conspiracy theory has gotten a bad rap. All right. People often use the word conspiracy theory to push aside your argument. I don't like what you're saying. Oh, you're just a conspiracy theory nut. So I don't like what you're saying. But conspiracies are real. You know what a conspiracy really means? It means two or more people organizing to do something in secret. Generally illegal, but in secret. And there are real conspiracies that are real. So I want people to hear what I'm saying. Like there are conspiracies of actions and behaviors which actually did occur in life, in history, and bad things came about because of that, and they are real. So it's one of those things where don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. I am talking about Illuminati, and I'm telling you to reconsider your foregone belief that it's real and that there is these puppet masters. I'm not saying that, again, people in power aren't trying to influence the world. Absolutely they are. But I think we fall into a trap where we try to imagine, like I said, some guy with a patch over his eye patting a cat, like the classic scenario. Yeah. Or something like the Avengers, where there's, whatever the bad organization was called, and they've got a whole bunch of Nazis, sitting in a big castle organizing how to do bad things. I think that's where we fall over. But again, conspiracy theories are very real.
So I want to go back to Jay-Z, Beyonce, Lady Gaga, and in their video clips and even in their lyrics, they have the symbols, and they even mention in the lyrics Illuminati. What's up with that?
It's funny, like, again, when my friends talk to me about Illuminati, that's exactly the first thing they said. Albert, haven't you heard Jay-Z? Look at this, look at this. He's doing this, right? So again, when I do this, it's not because I'm part of the Illuminati, but that's one of the symbols, the triangle, which symbolizes the pyramid with the all-seeing eye on top, apparently is a symbol of the Illuminati. And they say, oh, see, Jay-Z sings about it. And here's this concert with Beyonce, and she did the symbol. And here's Lady Gaga. And see her artwork on the album cover? Here's the pyramid. Yeah. What do you say about that, Albert? Aren't Illuminati real? Think logically with me for a second, Mina. If I'm a secret society secretly controlling the world, why would I want it to exist?
That's what I thought.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Again, I want people to sort of think about this logically. I'm a secret society. I'm organizing myself to control the world. I don't want anyone to know about it. I've recruited kings and prime ministers and the CEO of Google and And I've told Beyonce, yeah, I want you to be part of the Illuminati as well. Why would I tell her to go sing about it? Why would I go tell her, hey, your album cover has to Illuminati? Let me give to you what I honestly think is a more reasonable answer as to what I think it's just a PR stunt. I think a more reasonable explanation is that the question in Hollywood always is, where's my edge? How am I different to the next singer? You know, I'm Beyonce, I'm really good, I'm talented. Hey, there's another woman coming up the ranks. She's fabulous, she's a great singer. She might even sound like me. Well, how do I differentiate myself to her? I need an edge. It's funny with Lady Gaga. What's Lady Gaga known for? The weird clothes, the weird outfits. Yeah, it's an edge.
That's right.
It's a way to be different. We're talking about before Beyonce letting out about her multiple personalities.
Sasha Fierce, yeah.
Yeah, Sasha Fierce, right? Yeah. So again, why would you talk about it? I mean, maybe it's real. Maybe she, like, I don't want to put anything against her. Maybe she has multiple personalities. Like, it is a real thing that people have. But why would you want to let it out?
There's a conspiracy saying she gets demonically possessed on stage.
Okay. And then you want to establish it. Look, my attitude is, I don't know the woman, you don't know the woman, no one knows her except the people who know her. Before you start talking about, you know, what's happening with her, unless you know, I don't talk about it, all right? But in the end, what we do know is that she's part of the music industry. The music industry is always vying for, look at me, look at me. Don't look at him, look at me. Don't look at her, look at me. And so any edge is what's needed. You know, example in rap was when Snoop Dogg, I think it was, he faked his death. This is talking about years ago, like 15, 20 years. So he faked his death. Album sales went through the roof, and then he came out like a week later, oh, I'm not dead. You know what I mean? And it always happens. It's people are trying to get attention from this. I would suggest that the Illuminati, or the allusion to the Illuminati symbols in the lyrics, is just to create what I call a mystique. Ooh, Beyonce's really like, I think she's part of something that's bigger than who she is. It makes you remember her. And the next time that an album comes out, she'll continue on with that. There's a lot of rappers, a lot of singers that do all that sort of stuff. I mean, Puff Daddy did it in his song Power. Like, have you ever watched the video clip for it? There's allusions to all sort of Greek mythology, Roman mythology, you know, the sort of Damocles, all sorts of things. So just makes things interesting.
So all this is done, like you said, it's a publicity stunt to make sales, sell albums, pretty much.
That's what that's what I think.
We are being sucked into it.
Exactly.
Illuminati.
Who are we talking about? Who are we talking about? You know, we're talking about them.
That's right.
You know what I mean? But if someone else was just a normal singer, I want to be on my guitar, I want to make a really nice song.
Yeah.
I'll be clean cut here with my wife sitting in a field with my son eating an apple.
Sure.
Well, that's boring. I don't really want to be a part of that. I really want to know that. But there are people who've sort of latched onto being part of something secret. And what's the thing with secrets? Everyone wants to know the secret.
So let's tackle on it from a different perspective. As Christians, how should we protect ourselves, or how should we deal with all these conspiracies and all these theories and all these media that's just controlling us and telling us all these things about all these secret societies? How should we as Christians deal with this matter? Whether Illuminati is real or not, what's our focus as Christians?
See, it's always the big thing, isn't it? I'd always suggest to you that whatever energies that you're putting into understanding who the Illuminati are, in and of themselves, it's not wrong. It's great. You need to learn, educate yourself, understand how the world actually works. But if you become distracted by that as a Christian, if your Bible reading isn't there, if you don't have conversations with God every day, you don't pray, you don't think of others, you walk past a poor man thinking about the Illuminati, and you forget what Christ said, which is, if you see someone hungry, feed them, you know, as if it's me.
Yeah.
You miss out on the whole point of life. Like, in the end, as Christians, this world isn't ours, you know what I mean? Like,
sure.
There's something else. We're still called to care for others. We're still called to love others. But if we become so obsessed by something that's shadows and ghosts and smoke and whispers and mirrors, we lose our sense of self, and we lose what's really important in life, you know? Okay. Christ called us to love one another. You know, he said there's two things that, you know, all the law and all the prophets hang on, is that you love God with everything, with all your being,
Yeah.
and that you love your neighbor as you love yourself, and that everything else stems from that. So if you try to, I try to imagine myself, Christ, and go, Jesus, I've got you for 5 minutes. Tell me, Illuminati, is it real or not? You know what I mean? Like, could you sort of imagine that? It would sound quite
At the
ridiculous.
end of the day, we shouldn't lose focus on Christ.
No, and absolutely not. And you know what? Again, it doesn't mean that spirituality or religious books should be your entire focus. Of course not. Again, I'm admitting truthfully, kings and queens and emperors and rulers do bad things all the time. And you should know about it. You should learn about it. You should understand about it because you want to rectify it. Because as a Christian, but don't get obsessed by it, by it to the detriment of your faith. If you're obsessed to the detriment of your faith, then there's no point. Just like if I become obsessed by it and I'm no longer eating food, well, that's silly because I'll be dead soon and my obsession is to no point, no avail.
Okay. Well, that's all we have for tonight's show.
Cool,
and I'd like to thank you for your insight on Illuminati. You've opened up my eyes to a lot of things. And next time I see Beyonce and Jay-Z,
don't worry about it, man.
I'm not going to buy the album.
Oh, if you want to buy the album, buy it for the music. Don't buy it don't buy it for this, yeah?
Yeah, sure. Okay, and I also want to thank the viewers for tuning in tonight's show. It was a great show, and please share it with your friends. Share the link with your friends so they can see and get an idea on the insight on Illuminati. So we have next week's topic lined up. So next week's lined up topic is about purity within a marriage. So we think just because we get married, we can have sex, we can fantasize, we can do all these things. We forget to focus on what it is to be really married. So let's tune in tonight to next week's episode, Purity Within a Marriage. Thank you. I'm Mina Ibrahim from your studios in Sydney. God bless.
CYC, Christian Youth Channel.